Yeah, so I'm joining from California in the U.S. and I wish we could all be meeting and discussing this in person, but that'll wait for some other day. In the meantime, I wish everybody lots of good health and well-being as we explore these really important topics related to happiness and the good life and how do we cultivate a life that's meaningful and purposeful and all the things that we really want in this life. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about happiness more generally, but also this new area in the research that focuses on the science of awe and wonder. So I'm really honored to be participating in this and pleased to virtually meet those of you that are here in attendance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jonah. And so, what can you say, like some general ideas of your newest third book published last year, right, on the
Yeah.
science of awe?
Yeah. So for the past, I would say, almost decade of my life, I've been focusing more generally on this idea, this ancient, timeless question of how do we become happier and how do we help the people that we love and the people that we work with become happier as well. And so, my previous works and talks and things like that I do have all focused a little bit more broadly on happiness and focusing on principles like gratitude and mindfulness and self-compassion and acceptance and these other principles for well-being. But in the last couple of years, I've gotten really interested in this new area of the field, kind of the newest, hottest, freshest area of this research, in my mind at least, which is how these moments of awe and wonder can really change our lives. And so my most recent book, which came out about 6 months ago, called Awestruck, focuses on all of this research that is very cutting edge. It looks at everything from the impact of awe and wonder on our mood, on our stress, but also on our body and our brain. So looking at particular impacts on our nervous system, on our immune system response. And it turns out that these moments that give us goosebumps, these moments that make us go, wow, can really change our lives in these incredible ways. And so that's what my book, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, speaks to, is all of this research that points out how powerful these moments of awe and wonder can be for so many parts of our lives, for our relationships, for our health, and for our happiness, certainly.
Mm-hmm. So does it mean, because it seems to me that when we speak of wonder and the awe, like the result of wonder that accompanies wonder, does it mean that we need to be, everyone, all of us, we need to be a bit philosophers? We need to be like those who are capable for wonder, because actually, well, all these routines of everyday life, they do not allow us to wonder about things and to dedicate time for this feeling of awe. Does it mean that we need to get to philosophizing a bit?
I think it means a few things, but I think for one thing, it means that we all have to pause, step back, and kind of train our brain to notice all of the amazing things that are happening all around us that we so often miss, that we take for granted because of how busy everyday life can be. I mean, just the very fact that you and I are having this conversation in real time, where you are and where I am is pretty incredible if you think about it. But I think we all go through life, many of us at least, taking much of it for granted. Running water, a bed to sleep on, electricity, the internet, the natural beauty around us, and we can go on and on about it. To me, it's so much about how do we notice the small parts of life that are really magical, but that we so often miss. I think it might be useful to also think about, well, what do we mean in this research when we say awe and wonder? And there's a lot of definitions that are out there, but the one I particularly like is it's the feeling that we get when we're in the presence of something bigger than ourselves that challenges what we thought we knew about the world. And so we can experience this in nature. I experience a lot of awe and wonder in nature, but we can also experience it through technology. We can experience it through inspiring people that we admire and we feel uplifted by them. We can experience a sense of wonder when we just stop and reflect on how unlikely it is for us to even exist in this moment. All of the things that had to happen just perfectly for the last tens of thousands of years for us to even have this breath, to have this moment, to have this experience. And that's really mind-blowing if you think about it. When we look up at the night sky, when we gaze up at the sun as it's setting, or the moon as it's coming overhead, there are so many parts of life. And I would say one of the main messages of my book is, we can certainly experience awe and wonder in these very grand, large-scale experiences, but so much of it is really about finding it in the small parts of life, finding the awe that exists right under our noses, but that we don't often pause long enough to really view that way.
Mm-hmm. So I can, as I can understand, you also mean that we need to train our brain to feel positive experience, right? Like to get used to living through this positive experience.
Yeah, and it's a very similar principle for any of these sort of happiness skills that we talk about. Is the more that we experience something in that way, on a brain-based level, whether that's mindful awareness or gratitude or compassion or kindness, the more that we engage those parts of the brain, the more likely that we are to experience them again. And that when we even imagine experiencing things, let's say you had a lovely experience of wonder a month ago. Well, even when you just reflect on it and you recall it, it has many of those same reactions in your brain and throughout your body as when it was really happening. So that's another aspect of this, is we don't want to just turn the page. We don't want to just move on to the next thing. We want to linger with it. We want to replay it, relive it, and really activate that neural circuitry that is a big part of these experiences as well.
Mm-hmm. And I saw that you are emphasizing the lasting happiness, right?
Mm.
So sustainable happiness, because you know that we face such a fact that for many people who are not very deep in the science of happiness, like a very popular view that that happiness is something like a moment that doesn't last for a long time, and you cannot do anything to maintain this experience, and well, it's something that comes and goes and there's nothing to do with that. So what can you say about this lasting happiness, like the process?
Yes, and it's a great question, because I think when you say the word happiness, so many people have that idea that it's this very brief, this very fleeting, and also not a particularly deep experience. It's almost like a sugar rush that you feel good for a moment and then it's gone. And really, where my work and my writing and the lectures that I give focuses a lot more on is, how do we build something that's sustainable, that's lasting, and that really changes our lives? It doesn't mean feeling good all the time. It doesn't mean every day feels pleasant, but it means that we live life from a place of resiliency, from a place of strength, from a place of doing things that are meaningful to us, that give us a sense of purpose and belonging and connection. And so, I like to think of layers of happiness and different kind of ingredients, that there is a part of it that has to do with feeling good, but there's also this part of it that has to do with living well and, doing things that give us that sense of meaning and connection, belonging, purpose. That's a much deeper, more solid ground, so that even though life is going to give us challenges and we're going to have good days and bad days, we can still be living that through a place of greater well-being.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree with you, indeed. And what can you say, because we live in a very challenging period of COVID-19 quarantine restrictions and the time of pandemic, and many people actually they lived through a very complicated experience of this disease. And how do you think, and maybe you can like say something from your psychological practice, does this challenging experience of the disease help a person to focus on this wonder and awe experience? So after surviving the complicated disease physical condition, does it help to get better in wondering?
That's a wonderful question. It certainly can, I think, because it gives us that opportunity. It gives us the opportunity to shift from living life where we just go through the motions and we focus just on the day-to-day stress to a much deeper perspective. Now you can imagine either, as a society coming out of something like COVID-19, or an individual who sort of heals from it and comes out of it, the potential that gives us to notice the amazing things around us that we normally don't even take the time to notice. The potential that gives us to really value the sense of connection with the people that we love, and realize how precious that those relationships are. The potential that it gives us to feel a greater sense of gratitude for what we do have, not for what we don't have, because it could be so easily lost. The opportunity it has to feel inspired by other people who have done so much to fight this virus, and the opportunity that these experiences give us to notice just how wondrous the world is around us, in part because we come so close to losing it. That I think there's that layer of things where when we realize how fragile our existence is, our relationships are, and just how much our life is really tenuous in that way, it really does give us this opportunity to see things in this much more precious light, something to be cherished.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you can give, definitely it's complicated because it is different in each individual case. However, are there any like tools, advices for people not to get into depression after disease and maybe losing some physical condition that they had before, but to focus rather on awe and wondering and appreciation?
Great question. I would say first, we also want to give people lots of room and space to feel whatever they feel, and people have been affected by this in so many devastating ways. I don't think we want to just jump immediately to, well, let's focus on the things that are good and let's focus on the parts of life that are wonderful. I think we want to have both. And a lot of message of my work is that we want to find balance. We don't want to pretend like problems aren't there, but we also don't want to live only in those problems. We talked a little bit earlier about neuroplasticity and our brain's tendency to change based on experience. And when we only ruminate and dwell on and focus on the bad parts in life, we end up spiraling down, deeper and deeper into those places. So we have to find a way to stop that process and to balance it out with a different perspective. And so I think, I go back to many of the principles that I write about in many of my books. I focus on about 10 core principles for well-being. Awe is one of those that I really am passionate about as well these days. But I think that there's so many ways that we can break that cycle, whether that is focusing on the things that give us a sense of wonder and awe, whether that's stepping out of our own struggles by being there for another person. So compassion towards others can often help us heal ourselves. Focusing on those close social connections that we do have, and how do I invest in that as opposed to focusing on maybe the parts of my life that I don't have. Taking care, of course, of our body and the foods that we eat and the habits that we engage can be a big part of this as well. So I look at it as really, every day we have this choice of, do we want to give in to the negative parts of our experience and feed that side of things, or do we want to develop and build and cultivate our capacity for joy, our capacity for meaning, our capacity for engagement, for connection. And we're always going to have both. It's always a question. It's more of a question of each day, what am I going to add more fuel to? What am I going to focus more on? And that's, I think, what we do have some power over. We can't control the things that happen to us in life, but the way that we respond to that, to some level at least, is one of the few things that we actually can do something about. So, we talked about what awe is and ways that we might cultivate it, but I think many of the attendees at this conference might be especially interested to know a little bit more about the benefits that we experience when we have these moments. I think we think of these moments as very brief, here for just a few seconds, but I think there's these amazing effects that it has in ways both short-term as well as longer-term that speak to its power. So psychologically speaking, we now know that when we experience awe or wonder, it makes us happier, it boosts our mood, it lowers rates of feeling depressed. It reduces feelings of stress, even on a physical level. It strengthens our social connections, so people who experience awe feel closer to the other people in their lives. And it makes people kinder, believe it or not. So it actually makes people more altruistic, more likely to be giving towards others. So there's a lot of interpersonal as well as psychological benefits to it. And then if you look at what's happening physiologically, to me, one of the coolest findings is that when we experience these moments of wonder and awe, it actually reduces markers of chronic inflammation in our body. So if you think about what chronic inflammation has been linked to from a health-based standpoint, even to things like depression, awe, more than any other positive emotion that's been studied, actually reduces these markers of chronic inflammation. So it actually heals our body. It changes our brain. So the default mode network that tends to be really active when we're ruminating and worrying and our mind is wandering, that decreases in terms of activation. We become much more present. We become much more engaged with life that's right in front of us, as opposed to our mind bouncing in 100 different ways. So there's a lot more benefits to that. But I think in 2020, 2021, where we feel more lonely than ever before, we feel more stressed than ever before, there's record high rates of depression. It's amazing to me that awe actually seems to target many of the things that collectively as a society and as a world we need to work on. It helps us go from being lonely to more connected. It helps us go from feeling stressed to more relaxed. And these moments of wonder help us go from feeling depressed to more content in our lives. So that's just some of the benefits, but it's a really, to me, fascinating science that we're just starting to scratch the surface and learn more of. But turns out those moments really matter a great deal in our lives.
Thank you. And that while speaking and listening about awe, I've reminded myself such an interesting story about those people who actually probably refuse to feel awe, because that was a few years ago. I was in the Carpathian Mountains, and we have such a lake. It is called Sinevir, and that is the lake high in the mountains. That is very special based on location and the history of this lake and so on and so forth. And well, that is beautiful lake, and people are going there to experience the awe and to get this energy from nature. And there was many people or many tourists there, and there was a family. And they were very loud, so I could hear their conversation. And the father who approached the lake said, "Well, what's that? I can't see any beauty. It's awful. The water is dirty," and so on and so forth. And he was like, and the children and the wife, I saw that, I've noticed, because he was so loud, I wanted to know what's happening there. And I saw that he was actually ruining their experience. So, well, what should we do with such people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, there is some research that people, we do vary. We do have differences person to person based on personality and temperament and some other factors that make, we all might know a person who anything they see, they feel like is wondrous and amazing. And then you have people like that person that you mentioned who, here in the United States, they might go to the Grand Canyon and just sort of yawn or shrug and not be very impressed. So there are some differences in that. But I think at the same time, it is, there are some studies that show that, even if we start at different points, and it might be easier for some of us and more difficult for others, it is really almost more like a muscle that we can learn to develop and that we can build. And that some of it is really just kind of, as we said earlier, training our brain, training our mind to find this, wherever we are in a given moment. Can we find beauty? Can we find wonder? Can we almost build that habit so that we can find the things that are awe-inspiring all around us? But it's easier for some of us than others, and it takes time. It takes effort, like any habit and skill that we're trying to develop. So that person on the mountains that you mentioned, it might take him a little bit more practice than you.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Thank you for your contribution, for your participation. I'm very grateful for your time on the behalf of our whole team and organizing committee. Thank you and thank you for doing this. I mean, for your mission, for your passion, which is your mission, because that is incredible, and that is great that there are people all over the world which are united by such an idea to spread scientific knowledge of happiness and well-being.
I'm honored to be a part of it, and I hope that we all can continue to do that. As the world needs this more than ever. I would say the world needs healing, and the world needs the skills and the tools that can actually change their life. And that's just something that I feel very passionate and strongly about, is that even though there are always situations in life that are difficult and circumstances, we actually have power over how happy we become based on habits and skills and attitudes and behaviors. And I know that everyone who's involved in this conference shares that passion and that spirit. And I hope we can continue to help the world, even in small ways, to find more joy and meaning and purpose and love and belonging in their life. So thank you for having me, and best of luck with the conference. And yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, that last year when we made the first conference, people who were speakers, they even told that by being speakers and by participating in the event where other scientists share knowledge of happiness, they became happier even in the process of speaking.
It's a cool thing to be a part of, for sure. It makes it worth it, and that's what we're all. I think all the people that do this work share that sense of curiosity and wanting to know more about this, and the research changes and the research grows and matures. And I know that I love to learn about this just as much as I love to teach about it. I love to learn about it, and I feel like I get to benefit just as much as anybody from it, for sure.
Yes, exactly. So thank you very much.